Hey everybody, XEI here for another Let's Read of Dragon Age: The Stolen Throne by David Gaider. I am on Chapter 4, that's what this video will cover. I got a little ahead of myself in the last video at the conclusion end where I was talking about what we could look forward to in the next couple of pages. I hadn't looked at the size of the next chapter of Chapter 4. It is about 20 pages long. That's actually going to still keep us in the phase I call Conflict Arises. It's the third part of that phase that involves the hero's acceptance. So hero's reluctance happened before that. As we got in the tail end of Chapter 3, there was the whole, they come out of the woods, they find the path, and then Maric turns to Loghain and says, do we turn back or do we leave, or do we, do we not? It was the hero's reluctance in one sentence, which I loved the way that played out. But then of course they talk to Flemeth, the Witch of the Wilds, and secretly she says how she's going to put him back on a path, and the chapter ends with I accept. So Chapter 4 is going to be about the hero's acceptance, and we're going to learn a little bit about what that means. I suspect, because David Gaider moves pretty quick through the beats, through the points that need to be relevant in order to move his characters along, I suspect that it's going to be Loghain asking Maric questions about what it was that he agreed to. I don't believe we're going to hear that revealed in Chapter 4. I do feel like it's going to appear somewhere here at the tail end of the book. I think that it's going to be mirrored at the end, so we'll reveal it here, and then we're going to find out what that implies for the end of the book. So I don't think that's going to be part of it, but I do feel like it's going to be about Loghain questioning what it is that he's agreed to. We're probably going to learn a little bit more about what Loghain is willing to do to also accept his place as his second. I'm just going to call it at this point, because the whole thing with Loghain's arc so far has been, you can't just knight me and I'll follow you blindly. Like, that was kind of Loghain's reluctance in his journey, and I think he came around after, because the 3 days they spent together, and on the third day Maric basically didn't wake up, and then on the fourth day he kind of comes out of it, and blah 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 blah. So I think that they bonded there, whether they admitted to it or not, before they got captured by the Dalish. So I think it's going to explore a little bit about what Loghain feels, and also, generally speaking, the hero's acceptance chunk of the pattern starts to prepare us for the kickoff of Act 2. It's going to, so everything I said at the end of the last video about this is where you introduce the B characters, etc., etc. I think we're going to get maybe inklings of what that might be through Chapter 4, but I think that this is going to be more like, now they're going to bring the intro together, they're going to bring all the pieces together, and then Chapter 5 will actually be about the Act 2 kickoff and all that stuff, and what all that means, which I will also then speak to. Last episode was very long. I don't think that that's going to happen every chapter. I've gone through the entire book, and I've marked out just what the average page count is. It does range anywhere from 10 pages to about 27-30 pages. So we're probably going to have some of these episodes be very short, like 15-20 minutes. There's also going to be a chunk in the middle where there's probably not going to be too much relevancy. Actually, it's going to probably be Chapter 5 and 6. They're probably going to go fast, because a lot of that's all just like setup to then ramp up into the midpoint of the story that will then kick off the climax and stuff. Again, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I do think they'll go faster. That was just one of those moments where I just fawned over way more things than I anticipated fawning over. I do think things are going to move along, and with that, let me get straight into Chapter 4, and I'll be back when I have something to say. Opening paragraph, of course, I already have something to say because of the symbolism that was used, and I thought it was sort of relevant. They're sitting outside, lit by fire, most likely maintained by magic, so that's creepy enough for Loghain. And then the description goes, there were a great many things about the hut and the objects around it that he didn't want to think about too closely. The feeling that the marionette corpses hanging in the trees were watching them, for one, the way the trees seemed to change configuration around them, for another. It's obvious that Flemeth's hut is surrounded by Sylvans. If you've played Origins, you sort of get the understanding of that. There's also that short comic, which I wasn't really a fan of, just because, again, how it painted Morgan and Flemeth as being not villainous, because they were defending themselves from what I believe is consistently badly written Templars, because they're very one note, like very villainous, despite them being the knights of the setting and stuff. But anyways, so Sylvans, yeah. Okay, so the point here is the marionette corpse is hanging from the trees. It's the idea that, like, the word marionette is that, you know, that what's Flemeth known for? Well, manipulating a bunch of crap around her, like through ages, through centuries at this point is my understanding. So the idea that, you know, they mention the marionette corpses, it's that all of these people kind of fell into her trap. And, you know, it's not even that they were played by Flemeth, but it's that indicator that she is a mastermind. She's a master manipulator of events, and it's all captured in that first paragraph. So, and I'm back already. And right away in the second paragraph, Loghain also didn't want to think about what sort of promise the witch had elicited from Maric. Because of course someone like Loghain's not going to just say, "Ah, whatever. Yeah, so this creepy witch told him something that I agreed to." He's not going to go and say, I don't need to know what that is. He's going to be thinking about this for a long time. So if it doesn't happen in this chapter where it gets revealed, which I don't think it would, because it's a narrative detail that could really just kind of carry you through the book, and as a reader, you're going to want to know, and you're basically Loghain at this point. Loghain, I think, is going to be the audience voice to try to get at this information. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. Maric went in, talked to the witch, and then when he came out, the man seemed shaken and quiet and was resistant to even the most casual efforts Loghain made to inquire about what had gone on. So it was to remain a secret after all. There's the confirmation, at least for now. Some things to point out just in case they become relevant. During the night, Loghain pulled down Danan's body from the trees and gave him a burial. It wasn't a proper one, just kind of covered him with leaves and stuff like that. And then went to sleep. Woke up in the morning, there were provisions ready for them. And the witch had said, like, when they left the hut, that they would find their way out of the forest. They encounter Bluebird that leads them away. But something relevant here is the mention of Danan's body and the fact that he pulled them down, tried to bury them, but that the body wasn't there in the morning. A bit later, the text talks about how they're almost definitely walking through the woods of the Dalish elves, and they're good at staying hidden if they want to be. And then the mention of the elf Potter, which was the elf with the scar, and that Loghain had only ever known elves like Potter, the ones that have been around humans for so long that they knew nothing of the Dalish and whatnot. But I do think it's interesting that the names maybe would be brought up again. Danan was part of that scene, so whatever, but Potter, I feel like is someone who's going to play another part in this book. So this might be a way of David Gaider of just reminding you, hey, there's this character still out there. Don't forget about Potter, you know? So it's a very smart way of just reminding the reader, and, you know, that there are other characters still that might come into play. So on the third day, of course, it's the third day, they encountered an overgrown ruin with pillars jutting into the sky like rib bones, presumably having once held up a great ceiling. I wonder if that's where you meet Morgan in Dragon Age Origins, because that's just right out of the city, sort of. Well, I mean, yeah, no, it's like right out of the city. It's on the map right after Ostagar. Cool little like hint there. It's like a paragraph. This is like a throwaway paragraph, but it'd be cool that, like, just the idea that David Gaider had already, like, he set up those runes to mean something when he was writing this thing, and he was going to have this very simple detail have a call out inside the game itself and make it relevant, because that's where you pick up Morgan. That'd be cool. I'm speculating, but that'd be cool. Also cool parallel because it took him 3 days to get through the woods, and there was almost an escalating danger with the creatures following them. At one point there was like 20 wolves following them on the third day, and then of course on the fourth day they break out, and Loghain declares them cleared from the woods. I find that an interesting parallel considering the kind of struggle that Maric went through in those first 3 days with Loghain, where he eventually lost consciousness, and then Loghain had to care for him, and he had to come back out of it. On the fourth day is when he came out of it and then helped Loghain. So it's just an interesting parallel, because maybe it doesn't mean anything, but I find it's just these kinds of consistencies in writing. It's uncommon that they're accidental, because even if I can't figure out if there's a parallel there or not, it gives the brain, gives the mind something to kind of stew over and look into more deeply if it wishes. And some would say that sometimes it's just a waste of time and you're just bullshitting. Yes, probably. So Maric is just a wise ass. It's becoming very clear. So I gotta read this interaction. So they set up a fire at the edge of the woods when they're cleared, right? And so Maric goes out to get some wood, and when he comes back, he says, I saw some more wolves. And were they hostile? Loghain asks. Well, they didn't attack, if that's what you mean, but they were planning to. They told you that? Yes, in fact. They sent a rabbit with a note to inform me of their intentions. He dumped the wood unceremoniously next to the fire. Rather gentlemanly of them, I thought. Loghain ignored him, and he sat down on the grass watching the darkened sky overhead. I wonder if they were werewolves. Is there a way to tell? I mean, I was thinking the same. There's 20 of them. It's kind of cool because we get a little bit of a lore dump here where Maric talks about how he had a tutor once who told him the story of King Calanhad when he united the Clane tribes, and goes into the whole idea of like the werewolves and that, you know, just the lore behind werewolves in the setting. It's pretty good because they're very short drops of this information, and we're early on in the book, so it's not like this book is going to be filled with lore, but there's just enough there for you to get a snapshot of the kind of setting you're spending your imagination in. Well done. Well, that escalated really quick after the little lore dump about werewolves and lore, and Loghain consistently always saying, you know, superstition, whatever, people lie, and he keeps on dismissing the fact that these tales existed back then of just what happened when, you know, the Fereldens basically went into the woods and hunted down all the wolves just because there was such a werewolf problem that they just wanted everything to die, so they used hounds to go hunt them down. Anyways, I'm derailing. That's not the point. So eventually, what happens here is some horseback knights encounter them, and Loghain falls at first trying to defend Maric, and the scene ends with a female knight coming off the horse and approaching Maric, and Loghain this whole time is like, he's ready to cut off someone's arm because he's like, the first person who approached me is going to lose their arm. And then she approaches, she gets off the horse, she approaches, and he still has his sword up. Aren't you happy to see me at all? She asks. And then she punches Maric. Maric falls to the ground, and Loghain sheaths his sword. Yeah, you definitely know him. And that's how it breaks. That's how it breaks. These two guys. And so her name is Rowan, and of course I'm like, did I already read about a Rowan in the book? Like, I got a little bit confused because I'm like, the name sounds familiar, but I don't know where it's from. Well, it's from the back. It's from the back of the book where it talks about Maric's allies being, his only allies are the outlaw Loghain and Rowan, a beautiful warrior maiden promised to him since birth. So we are about halfway through chapter 4. There's about just over 10 pages left, and we are still in the hero's acceptance. We do have the acceptance part of this being that, you know, Loghain isn't asking further questions about what it is that the witch said, so we can safely assume that that's now not going to come up in the story anymore until the end, like I suspected. They are pretty aligned though. Like there's oh, I guess that's what the female on the cover is probably Rowan. It just hit me. But now, oh wait, now I might just spoil something to myself, but I mean, I don't see a scar, and it might be a female, but there's like a fourth character right there, and it looks maybe like it's an elf, but I don't know if it's gonna be Potter. Anyways, this is the part where, you know, because we're halfway through chapter 4. Remember, we're gonna get to the point where we start kicking off the B stories. We start kicking off the breakdown of allies, and here we have an ally getting introduced before chapter 4 ends, and this is all about the seeding because of what's going to be relevant for the next chapter, which is all about getting deeper into the supporting cast. And like, I hadn't remembered that there was another ally mentioned here on the back cover, but it looks like, I mean, if it's on the back cover, it means this ally is important. It just wasn't important for the setup of the story, but it's going to be important enough that she's introduced right here, so that we're probably going to spend chapter 5 focusing on the connection between Rowan and Maric. It looks like even half this chapter is going to be about that because we still got the 13 pages left. and because of the way that last section broke. So it's obvious we're going to get a little bit of setup here, but then I think, you know, it's just going to set up like what these three people, she has other dudes with her too, so she's leading, I guess 3 other knights, 3 or 4. I think part of his destiny is about creating a fighting force to take back the throne, take back the crown, and I think this is the start of it. This becomes very important to the hero's acceptance part of the journey, when like Maric has to probably reconcile with whatever's going down with Rowan here. Promise's birth, it's not like it was his fault. I don't know why he got punched in the face, but that's a little bit we'll find out. It's a little strange to me though. Okay, so it immediately opens up with, you know, after Rowan kind of puts all the pieces together, because she was under the assumption that Loghain actually kidnapped Maric because she saw him reclining and she thought that he was unconscious. And then the second part of her was like, did Maric just run away? So it's like she didn't really know like all the pieces. And then at the end of it, it's like she looks at Loghain and she says, "Oh, I suppose I owe you an apology then, sir." It's like after she punches Maric in the face. So it does look like they've known each other since they were kids, and he used to like tease her and then run to his mother and stuff. So it looks like he was an aggravator as a child, but it did look like she definitely put a bunch of pieces incorrectly together, and it could have led to a lot of bloodshed. But it's been quickly brushed aside, as David Gaider is wont to do, so that the plot can just move forward. It just gets cleaned up with these great lines, because they could, and I say great lines, it's not like they are brilliantly written. I'm just saying it's like one line, and it's so perfect for the scene to just end it. And, you know, like, I accept. Do we turn around? I should apologize then, huh? Let's just move it along, right? You just spent like half a page on it or a page on it. And I think it's very slick storytelling. Oh, she introduced herself as Rowan Guerin. Redcliffe family. Eamon Guerin. She's the daughter of the Earl of Redcliffe. Okay, so her father had the army looking for him, and after hearing what happened to Maric's mother, they assumed he was dead, and she begged him to keep at it. And it just seems weird because she punched him in the face. So it's sort of like, I guess it was probably for comic relief to end, but you're looking for a dead dude, and you found him, then you punch him in the face. No. Okay, that's a little weird. Funny, but a little weird. But there we go. Now we're getting a little bit of the family tree explained. Fun exchange between Loghain and Rowan. I mean, fun, but like sort of dark. But because Loghain seems to be her equal to a certain degree. He's just good at stuff. Like he gets on the horseback and he starts trotting around, and of course Maric looks at him and said, like, thinks, of course he's good at that too. You know. Loghain also predicts the reason why Rowan sent her 4 dudes on 2 horses back to the castle, more as a distraction than anything else, just in case they were being tailed. So Loghain is just good at, like, again, that gut instinct, that strategically he gets things. But then she slips up and says, you know, like, you're good for a commoner, essentially is what she was about to say. And Loghain calls her on that. And then Rowan says, well, you know, not everyone can own a horse. Loghain says, well, my father taught me because he owns this farmstead, he owned the farmstead, and blah blah. And then she asks, well, did he teach you your manners as well? And Loghain's response, and that's where it was like, wow, he shut her up good, because no, my mother did after she was raped and killed by Orlesians. And it's like, moving on. And then he trots on up ahead, and so we do get a breakdown of the Rowan family. So the Rowan's family had made many sacrifices for the rebellion. Earl Rendorn had given up his beloved Redcliffe to the usurper, so the Orlesians have taken over Redcliffe at this point. His wife, the Orlesa, had died from fever on the road, and he had sent his 2 younger sons, Eamon and Tegan, away to live with cousins in the far north. So there, at one point I was like, I'm gonna flip the page, and we're gonna find out they're in the story. No, they're up north. Who knew if the Earl's sons would even recognize him if they returned now? So, well, I mean, so this has to end some way where it lines up origins, right? Where Eamon takes the throne. But anyways, it's kind of interesting. It's fun to see the kind of lineage, the family lines, you know. And here we go. We are in the last 7 pages or so of the chapter. Rowan has taken them to the rebel camp, And upon entering, it looks like people start to recognize Maric as the prince. Eventually, one person says the prince, or however it went down, and then just comments if he's alive. It's the prince. General cheer welled up in the crowd. A sound of relief and excitement. Some of the older men were actually crying, and some of them hugging and pounding their fists into the air. So, here it is. Heroes, acceptance. We're going to end it with this chapter, because that's the way the pattern works. Well, we haven't gotten to that point yet. We haven't gotten to the point where Maric embraces what's going down, but I suspect that's what's going to happen by the end of this chapter. At this point, more than ever. We have our first lore drop for the golem, this one being presumably controlled by someone with the robes, marking him as ranking enchanter of the Circle of Magi. Jesus, they even have mages in here, inside this camp. Curious. Prince Maric, he called out, frowning with familiar impatience. The mage had served the Arl as a retainer and advisor for years now, and had been on good terms with Maric's mother. Here we go, still introducing some more characters that might show some relevancy here. I don't have a name yet, but we'll see. It's Wilhelm. I'm speeding ahead. I'm glancing ahead. I should just read. But we might have ourselves a mage and a golem joining this troop. We'll see. I'm kind of looking forward to that. Oh geez, so Willem doesn't really trust that it's Maric, because he starts off with like, oh, good timing there, and then he starts doing these gestures, like doing this magic thing, probably to detect if he's like under some magical disguise or something. And Rowan tries to stop him from like doing this, and she's like, no, I think I would know Maric if I saw him, don't you? And he just turns to her and says, no, I'm not sure that you would. So I don't know what that means yet, but there's like a subtle kind of, it's a very subtle indication that, you know, Rowan is someone who is driven by her emotions, and that's probably going to be something that's going to get in the way. It's going to be her weakness as well. It like equally drives her as it's going to be something that potentially puts them into some sort of crisis. But that, or it's suggesting that she's too easy to trust. Despite all the facade of being this kind of stern person, but maybe it's just a facade, maybe, and she does lead with her heart, maybe. I don't know. But then William turns around. Many calls out, "You must prepare for battle. Your prince has returned to you, now ready to defend him." Like, just get straight into it. And his golem even gets into it, fell into place directly behind him, scanning the crowd with its fearsome, baleful eyes. The soldiers immediately burst into life, several commanders among them bellowing orders. Maric stared at the mage with growing alarm. Why? What's going on? So this might go back to perfectly timed, so it looks like something's about to go down. We're almost at the end of the chapter. I love when the pattern comes together. Come, I'll let the Arl explain. I'll be back. Interesting interaction here as the Arl is taking Maric into the red tent. I'm assuming it's a commander's tent. I'm assuming something's about to go down. And Loghain's following, and then the father of Eamon stops Loghain, and then they have an exchange that is looking to quickly escalate, and Maric has to step in the middle of them. But it shows that sort of range of, you know, the royalty, even though they're kind of in a rebel army and they're no better, like they're almost worse than a commoner at this point, to be frank. But they still have that entitlement that comes from nobility. I think I said royalty there. Nobility. And Loghain being a commoner, there's that interaction. But then, of course, Maric steps in and says, no, he's the guy who saved me. And if it wasn't for him and his father, I wouldn't be here at all. And the Arl says, well, you'll be rewarded. Loghain quickly says, I don't want a reward. Fine. And then he turns back to Maric and then says, I need to speak with you, lad, and it's not a discussion to be held in front of any commoners, especially men we don't know. He bows politely to Loghain, so even though he's being a bit of a noble jackass, he does bow politely and said, no offense, sir, none taken, Loghain. Loghain's kind of, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about any of that. He feels like the kind that probably should, and that it would mean something to, but it's almost like, no, it's almost like he understands his place. He understands the ranking system of this society, and he's not offended by any of it. He understands his place. I think it just reinforces that part of his character some more, you know. Maric does impose himself in front of Rendorn and says he's not a commoner. So he's going to step in, and is he going to make a knight comment here? And of course, as soon as he says that, the Arl looks confused. So does Rowan, who quietly raised her eyebrow from a step away. Even Loghain looked at Maric as if he might have been slightly mad. He's the son of a knight, Maric insisted. A man who died in my service. He's also saved my life more than once, and I will see him treated accordingly. So it's cool here that, I mean, it's that affirmation that these two are on this path together. This destiny is intertwined between both of them. This story about them and what they like. All of these patterns are going to apply in some way to this duo. So yeah, this is almost like the acceptance that they are one at this point in this journey. The usurper's men are marching on us as we speak. Our situation is desperate. They know where we are and managed to almost surround us before we became aware of their approach. This shit's gonna go down. Chapter 5. Interesting use of lines here, because it all goes back down to when the heroes find their calling, when they find that moment of acceptance. It's all about hope, and we've seen this in a lot of tales, right? But it's it's like, how did the usurper know where we were? How do they know? Is it magic? Was it, they could have been a Ferelden traitor, because there's plenty of those around. That's what got Maric's mother killed. And there's one line that he says, the Arl says here, there is a plan, the Arl stated. Now that you're here, lad, we have hope. All is not lost. The idea of hope, that is one of the, it's like this primal driver for a hero's journey story, that they become a symbol of hope. And he says, like, if we leave now with a small number of men, with William's magic to our advantage, we can slip out. And Maric asks, well, what of the army? And the answer is, it's lost. Jesus. It's just that acceptance of the army is willing to stay back, do what they have to do to defend the throne. It's you we need to get out, Maric. The royal line rests with you. No, we can't abandon the army. That's madness. We can rebuild the army again, just as your mother did. The Arl sighed heavily. The fact that Rowan found you just in time is a sign from the Maker. A sign from the Maker. It's always, or it was a witch with wilds. We need to take you away from here before it's too late. No, Maric paced angrily, staring at Rowan and her father. You know, he disagrees. I can't believe what I'm hearing. I didn't come here just to lose my mother's entire army. We have to do something. There's nothing to be done, lad, the Arl said gently. Yeah, things are gonna go bad. Looks like we're gonna split off the group. Anyways, it's a fun dynamic going on here, is that for sure. Maric is willing to die here at this point. He's like, nope, we stay and fight. The army, everyone fights. If we stay and fight, you'll die, the Arl says. Maric says, then I'll die. I think scenes like this are more like, it's obvious that strategically, no, you're probably not going to get what you want here, because it's about the broad play. It's about the long plan. I think this is a lesson that Maric is going to have to learn too, in order to become a ruler that can kind of put all this back together. But it does show a part of his character that, Loghain's in a tent here, but it shows a part of the character that Loghain can come to respect. It's also something for the reader's perspective, like, this is a character he is willing to sacrifice in order to get what he wants. But when you're trying to position yourself as a king, that's not the right way to do it, because you're not just, you have to think about beyond yourself. Like, there's a kingdom here you have to protect and you have to rebuild, and so you need to think beyond yourself. It's noble, but it's not the right move. Let's see how the last page goes. But Maric does pull a power play here, because, the Arl says, no, I understand that you're trying to be brave, lad, but this is not a time for discretion. And Maric sets his jaw. And I understand what you're getting at, your grace, but that's not your decision. And then he answers, not my decision. I lead this army. My army, Maric insisted. Whew! Or don't you follow your king? I don't see a king here. Oh, balls! The Arl seethed. I see a boy who's trying to be brave. Queen Moira would have understood. She would have left these men if she had to, for the rebellion to live on. She's dead, Maric slams his fist. And I would rather die beside these men than abandon them to save my own skin. I won't do it. Don't be stubborn. There's no point in fighting just to lose. Then win. Loghain suddenly blurted out, Oh man, this turned around in a way that I didn't expect. Okay, I still got a page. Let's go. And of course I don't shut up. His interruption was unexpected enough that even Arl Rendorn stared in surprise. Rowan arched a brow curiously as Loghain came forward, his expression annoyed. Don't stay and lose, he repeated. Stay and win. Whoa, it just dawned on me as I reread that, because I got chills on my back, because I'm like, what did he do at Ostagar? Don't stay and lose, he repeated. Stay and win. Oh my god, the parallel just dawned on me. God damn. Or maybe was that the lesson? Well, hold on. We still got half a page. Whoa, is like Loghain doing a play now? I love that both Loghain and Maric sort of their strengths sort of like they turned it up to 11 here. Like Loghain is challenging the Jarl. That is no place for someone like Loghain to do. But Loghain is just constantly going back like, no, you have things my father didn't have. Well, your father is dead, isn't he? Yeah, but if you had half the shit you guys had, half the warning you guys had, my father would have gotten us through this. And geez, and it's just, no, you're wrong. Like Jarl just is like, the Jarl is just like, no, you're wrong. And he says, you have advantages you don't even know about. Trust me, you can win. I'm almost at the end here, but it's the idea that Loghain is almost positioning himself now as, here's where the Loghain comes out that I'm sure is going to carry through this book, which is like, here's the tactician, here's that, like that perfect, almost perfect tactician, of course, until Ostagar. But yeah, this is Maric took a step towards Loghain, hope creeping across his face. Do you have an idea? Loghain paused, his eyes darting uncertainly among Arl Rendorn, Rowan, and Maric, as if he just realized they all were, in fact, paying attention to him. For a moment it seemed he might back down, but then Maric saw it in those icy blue eyes. Resolve. Yes, Loghain nodded. I do. That's it. That's chapter 4. What a great ending. Holy crap. That went in one page. That completely did a 180 on me. I was on the Jarl's like side. I'm like, no, they need to survive, man. They need to get out of Dodge and be able to like prepare and like come at them from another angle or something. But I don't even know why I was thinking that, because it's literally the opposite of the whole point of this pattern, because it's supposed to end, and by my numbers, by the way, it pretty much does end at exactly 108. Of course, I'm sure it's just coincidence. It's just coincidence. And I hate, by the way, that my book is doing this. It's so infuriating because I love books so much. But are you guys seeing this? My book is getting all twisted and crap. I friggin' hate that. Like, straighten out book. What was I saying? Anyway, so it's like literally the pattern of this is heroes acceptance. It comes to an end with the hero, or heroes in this case, they accept what their part is in this story and they move forward, where like I've summed it up in like the way I've like written this thing just to remind myself what these pieces are, but I summed it up as, you know, whatever the world was for the hero before that moment, it's no longer their world. It's they embrace the idea that the world has now changed. They're playing a whole different, they're approaching it in a whole different way. Their mindset has changed. They're just, everything about how they're going to approach their future is like a blank slate, because they've accepted an entirely new, like disruptive way of thinking that they weren't used to, and that's going to be the catalyst for them to kind of create all these new opportunities for themselves to get through the story. So I don't know why I just I was so into like what was being said by the R, where I'm like, this is, of course this sounds like the right idea, that I didn't even consider the pattern. I was so lost in the story. So I do love the way it ended in a page and a half. Everything just sort of turns around. The next pattern, you can watch the end of the last episode, maybe the last 20 minutes or so, where I talk about what the third pattern is going to be, but it's really all about just getting the team together now. And they have more than a team, they have a whole goddamn army. So if they survive this, the rebel army is now in play, and that is like, there's gonna be a lot of time to explore what that means in the start of Act 2. I'll get into what that means at the start of the next episode. Of course, that's going to be in 3 parts, but I'll break it down a little bit more relevantly. Now that I have all the pages broken down and how long these things last, I've got it all more or less broken down inside my algorithm, my pattern kind of breakdowner, and I'll be able to kind of guess this stuff a little bit better at the conclusion of episodes, so that I'm not, you know, doing what I did last episode where I talk about what's going to happen 2 chapters from now. This was a perfect chapter in terms of how the hero's acceptance plays out. I'm so happy about how that played out. Anyways, I will catch you in the next episode. Don't forget to explore, engage, and inspire, everybody. Peace.